Awesome. Well, we're expecting more folks will be joining us over the next couple of minutes. But in the meantime, I just want to welcome you to today's conversation and appreciate you for being so timely. We are looking forward to a rich conversation and hopefully really informative 55 minutes up here as we jump into a conversation about Circle's newest data tool, Youth Voting and Civic Engagement in America. And what we're hoping to do today is really give our partners the capacity to understand how and why this tool was created and a sense of what they might do with it, what we hope they might do with it, both in their work and in their impact in the world from here. And when we say partners, we actually mean we're hoping that this tool serves a purpose and adds value to a wide range of stakeholders, from teachers to advocates to community members to policymakers and the press. And I think that there's a little bit of something in it for everyone, but if it's not something that we offer proactively as we're in the conversation today, please do feel free at any time to shout out via the chat or in other ways, which we'll just review in a quick second, so that we can make sure that you get the most from the tool and this time together. Our plan for today is to do a few introductions and welcome. We're knee deep in that now, to shift a little bit into what the tool is, how it's structured and why it's structured that way. Then delve into a live tutorial, if you will, looking at some potential use cases and then previewing a few resources that we have to hopefully kickstart you into action, and then spend some time at the bottom end of the call thinking about any questions that we answer as we go, and hopefully getting some feedback from you. Thanks to those of you. It's great to see you here who are introducing yourself in the chat. We are so excited to know you. By way of introductions, I do want to explain a little bit who the voices behind the screen are now. So we're speaking on behalf of Circle. Quick grounding in Circle for those who are less familiar. We are the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement, a nonpartisan independent research organization focused on youth civic engagement in the United States, and a part of the Tisch College of Civic Life at Tufts University. We're really focused on understanding and improving the context and conditions that shape youth civic engagement in communities across the country. And we're concerned especially with eliminating the systemic barriers that keep some young people marginalized from and underrepresented in civic life. And at Circle, what we do is conduct extensive research on youth participation and leverage that research through collaboration with and support of really hundreds of practitioners on the ground, from those in classrooms to those in the press, to those in halls of power, to those who are organizing campaigns to influence those in halls of power all over the country. And we're really hoping and working to improve opportunities for all young people to acquire and use the skills and knowledge they need to meaningfully participate in civic life. And we believe that our communities and our democracy become more just and more equitable when all people, individually and collectively, get involved and take action. So that's a little bit about us as the organization, us as some of the people who you're going to be coming into contact with today. My name is Sarah, and I am a Research and Impact Fellow at Circle. I've only been on the team for a handful of months now, but I've been a long distance fan for many years. I started my career as a classroom teacher, and for the past almost 9 years, I was helping run a civics education organization that focuses on action civics education. It's called Generation Citizen. So I'm really happy to be working on the Circle side, thinking about what we're learning from and how we might better support teachers, as well as doing some projects that we're working on related to youth representation in media. You're also going to come into contact with my colleagues, Abby and Adam, so I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. This is Abby Kisa. I'm the Director of Impact at Circle. Like Sarah, I didn't start out as a researcher. I started out working with college students all across the country and came to Circle to help do the work of translating our research for practitioners. And I've been on the Circle team ever since, and am really excited to learn from all of you and your take on all of this and how you think you might use this today.
Awesome. And my name's Adam Strong. I'm a Research Impact Fellow here at Circle. I've been here for about a year now. Before coming to Circle, I really focused on organizing and national policy advocacy. I did that for a number of years, and then transitioned here at Circle, where I could really kind of dive in on research and things of that nature to think about, how can we systematically, expand and diversify the electorate and ensure that all young people have, visible, accessible, meaningful opportunities. So right now, kind of what I focus on is really in communication strategy and implementation of, communication strategies and things of that nature. And I work with Abby closely here in DC in our Impact office.
Thank you. So those are our introductions. Thank you so much for yours on the side. For those of us joining, welcome. We're so glad to have you here. And now that you've gotten acquainted with the chat function, I'll also say, please feel free to use the chat function to share questions as they arise throughout the talk today. If we don't address them in real time, we'll certainly make plans to return to them during our Q&A portion at the end of the call. And as we're really getting started and easing into things, we would love to just test out how folks are doing so far, make sure everything's working for you and you can hear us. We'd love to invite you to either utilize those reactions at the bottom of your screen, give us a clap if you're feeling good, or a thumbs up, or a go faster on the sidebar if you're really eager to get back to Tiger King or entertaining children or pets, or trying to do the immense amounts of work that I'm sure are on your plate right now. Thanks for testing those out. And with that, I want to hand it over to Abby to really help walk us into the tool for the first time today.
Thank you, Sarah. So one of the things about the webinar that we've built for y'all today is, instead of kind of going through a presentation of why we did this and then a walkthrough, we're going to try to weave it together a little bit. So as Sarah said, I'm going to talk a little bit about why, we're going to show you a little bit about the site, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about why, and then Adam's going to go through a little bit more of the walkthrough. So to start, I want to explain that this tool is really about building engaged communities. We are at Circle are focused on building sustainable and resilient infrastructure and organizations that support a wide range of young people, because we believe and have seen in the research that that is really critically important to really broadening and diversifying who's engaged in communities in the United States. So we really want to equip you with the best that you can do to contribute to that. So first, in order to access this tool, you have to go through what I'm really excited to say is Circle's brand new website as of literally a month ago. It was years in the making, and we're really happy to be in the 21st century now. On our site, you can see on the main menu that there's different options for different people based on their relationship to research, but also your relationship to civic engagement. So if you need to kind of understand and wrap your head around civic engagement more, there's understanding youth civic engagement. If you're ready to dive into some research, you can see our 6 research areas under our research. We have a 2020 Election Center where you can see what we're doing about youth voting. And then under Explore Our Data is where you'll find this brand new tool. The first option under Explore Our Data is Youth Voting and Civic Engagement in America, which is the tool that we're talking about today. So feel free to bring that up in another window so you can click through this with us and do a little bit of exploration yourself. The landing page on the tool really exemplifies what we're trying to do here. And what we're trying to do not only in giving access to data, but also help people make connections, and make connections that the conditions and the context in the communities and the states that young people live in really matter when it comes to the amount and the quality and which young people are engaged. And I'm going to share a couple of reasons why we've done that. So as you may know, Circle's been around for almost 20 years, believe it or not. And in our 2 decades of experience, we've seen that there are very different levels of opportunity that young people have to civic engagement, civic and political engagement. And so one of the things that we are trying to do with our research is understand how conversations and opportunities can be more visible, more accessible, and more meaningful to a wider diversity of young people in communities and states in the country. And part of this is one of the reasons, or one of the things that we kind of stand on as one way to do this is understanding that young people are situated within circles of people, organizations, family. You know, you're in a school, but that school is in a district, and that district's in a state, for example. And so there's lots of stakeholders who have an ability to influence young people, both positively and negatively, unfortunately, in young people's concept of themselves as civic actors, thinking whether or not their voice matters. And so as we go through this tool, you'll hear us, Sarah's already mentioned it, talk a lot about the many different stakeholders who can use this data. Yes, we would love them to, but also who can use the data to influence and build and strengthen what they're doing in their communities. So it's not just local youth organizations. I'm thrilled to see election administrators on here today. It's folks in schools, obviously, and a lot of different types of organizations and decision makers in communities. So this is one reason why when we get to the tool, you'll see that there are a lot of different indicators on the tool that could speak to a lot of different stakeholders. And this is why, because research shows that a lot of different settings affect young people's civic skills, young people's knowledge of what happens in their communities, as well as the attitudes that young people develop about their self-worth and their worth within the context of their community and democracy. So we hope that you can use this to really think deeply about that. Another thing that I want to point out that is part and built into this tool is thinking about how we build engagement and how we do that so that we don't reify political inequalities, right? Because unfortunately, a lot of the research that we've seen over the past 2 decades at Circle really shows that access issues are critically important to dealing with so that we can increase the number of young people who are engaged. Right now, in lots of different settings, that is not the case. And we have systems of engagement that reify political inequality. And so that's one of the questions that we're really asking by trying to make this connection in the tool between young people's participations in some of these conditions. So when you go into the tool, on that note, when you go into the tool, you'll see 2 big sides, right? There's a side with the awesome green color that I love that shows measures of youth voting and civic engagement. And then there's the side on the right with the more muted blue color that shows conditions that shape youth engagement. And what we're trying to show here is the relationship in the kind of discussion between these 2 sides. And when you dive into the different indicators, you'll see, and encourage you to do that real time with us, you'll see that you have the ability to look at these indicators at the state level and compare states. You can look at it through a congressional district lens, or even break it down to the county lens. A couple of notes about that. You will not see every single indicator on all 3 of those levels. We have done our darndest to bring you lots of data. And sometimes we weren't able to get every single indicator on each of those levels. So hope you'll forgive us. We've worked really hard on this. But some things, for example, like the middle column about youth civic engagement, it's only at the state level. And that's because of the limitations that the data has. It's just not, it wasn't built to be broken down by congressional district or county level, just to give an example of that. That data itself is actually from the census. the Census Current Population Survey. And that's just one example of the many, many sources that have gone into building this data tool. And if you click on the upper right, like Adam showed us, you can see that we have listed not only a definition in the for the measure, but we also have shared with you where we got the data to be totally transparent with you so you understand that. And we're grateful for all of the folks who we have, you know, put this data out publicly, and we've been able to leverage it and give you more access to it. So you'll see the census, you'll see voter files, you'll see Edison Research exit polls. You'll also see the Federal Communications Commission for the broadband data. You'll also see the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation using their health rankings, the Cook Political Report, and lots more. So if you have questions, you need to go to that source page. The other thing that I want to point out is that there are lots of ways to think about youth civic engagement. We are building 2020 youth surveys right now, and we have so many questions, right, that can really capture youth engagement in an election year. But the catch is that lots of that data is developed on the national level, but not yet on the state, district, and county level. So we have provided on the data tool as many indicators as we could to keep it to a reasonable amount so it's not overwhelming, that are available on those levels. And so one of the unfortunate things is that for some of the newer types of engagement, we don't have as many data available on those levels to try to understand, you know, petitioning or using social media to do advocacy. We have that on the state level in here, but not lower than that. So just to continue on a little bit, and please continue to, you know, test this out while we're going through this ourselves. One of the things that I want to share share for context is that, you know, because we know that these differences exist in communities and that we need to make things more visible, accessible, and meaningful, we have really been talking about this idea of shifting from mobilizing to growing. And this slide here exemplifies how we talk about it in an election context. We do a lot of work on elections and voting. Not all of our work, we do a lot of work on K-12 civic ed too, which you'll hear a little bit about later. But we believe that moving from this mobilizing context to a growing focus and strategy allows us to reach more young people where they are, include many more stakeholders, right? And in an election moment, reach young people before they reach 18, because we know that civic engagement is learned, and we know that nothing, you know, there's no magic fairy dust that we can sprinkle to make sure that all young people have information about where, how to vote when they turn 18. So that's why we think about this growing model. And part of that is because, unfortunately, the way that some of our civic engagement processes work, and I'm going to use an election example again, is that, you know, the way that much of outreach happens, and here's an example of, you know, more partisan outreach, is that the young people who are contacted because they voted before. So this leaves so many young people out. And these young people tend to be young people from low-income communities, unfortunately. And so this is an example of data that we collected in 2018. And you can see that there's a huge difference. Almost half of young people, young people who voted in 2016 were almost twice as likely to be contacted by a campaign, a party, or someone working on behalf of a candidate. So this is something that we're trying to work to change. And, you know, if we use a little bit more election data to show this, we see this point about, you know, different education access, right? So we see that in 2018, young people who were in college, who had at least some college experience, were much more likely to be contacted by these political actors who do a lot of outreach across the country. And so this is why we need to think about growing, need to expand the stakeholders who are doing this work. And this is national data, but to give you a few examples of state data and how these differences can even manifest at the state level and why this data tool is helpful on this point is that if you look at some of the conditions and some of the inputs to civic engagement in states, you see that they can differ dramatically. So in this data tool, you'll see that in Alabama, the child poverty rate amongst counties can differ unbelievably dramatically, from 10% child poverty in one county to 68 in another. And in Michigan, broadband rates range from under 50% of households in a county to 98% of households in the county. Both of these things, you know, especially in this moment where, you know, many of us are at home, broadband is so incredibly important, is going to be important for primaries and the general election. And then just to give one more example of a state, if you look at Florida, voter registration rates at the county level in 2018 ranged from 44% to 89%. That is an absolutely huge difference, especially in a state that, you know, was really important in 2018 for so many reasons. So these are some of the things that are so important to why we created this tool, and that you can uncover with this tool to understand what's happening in your state and your communities even more. So I'm going to pass it over to Adam to do a little bit more of a walkthrough.
Hi, everyone. So this is really my favorite part and probably what many of you have been waiting for this entire time. So now we're going to go more of a brief tutorial on how to leverage and use this tool. So just really starting from the beginning, we're at our home page and then just clicking Explore Our Data, Youth Voting and Civic Engagement in America. Here you'll see a landing page that kind of goes into more detail on, you know, some of the different things that we have talked about today. And then we'll click Explore Our Data, get started. Then here we are, we're back at the indicator list. So some of the things that, you know, I just want to re-uplift is that, you know, you can look at data on the state level, congressional district, and the county level. And one thing to kind of highlight is for youth in elections, you can toggle between 2018 and 2016. So 2016 was the last presidential year, 2018 was the last midterm. So if you're looking for, you know, specific comparable years for something related to that, you can do that there. And something that you guys may not be as familiar with, some of these different measures, some of these different indicators on the youth and elections is the YESI ranking. So YESI stands for the Youth Electoral Significant Index. So it's an index that we created that can be used as a tool for individuals, campaigns, organizations, and institutions. They are seeking to increase youth political engagement. The index provides a ranking of the top 10 Senate, governor, and House races where young voters have the highest potential to influence the results of an election. So that's something that we produce, and the next update is actually coming out here in a few weeks. So if you're interested in the next 2020 YESI index, that'll be coming soon. And it can also be used, you know, for stakeholders to help identify different places where additional efforts and resources to turn out the youth vote could be decisive. And it can also be a tool for equity and really broadening engagement. You know, if efforts focus on reaching those not engaged in the top ranked locations, right? So since some of the top locations will be where, you know, campaigns will be substantially supporting others, right? Other states and communities. So again, these little info buttons are incredibly useful. So if you have any thoughts, if you'd like to know the definition or what is some of these measures, I highly recommend clicking on the info button. But first, we'll do kind of a brief tutorial, a brief walkthrough on just looking at things from the national level. So clicking comparing all states. And then perhaps let's look at voter registration rate. So as you can kind of see that on the national level, you can only look at one indicator at a time. So let's click see data. So for voter registration rate, we see the national rate is 61.5%. And then we have a national map here of voter registration rates across the United States. And we'll see that there's huge variations in voter registration, and that's really based on the conditions that affect civic engagement. So some of those other things. And we'll also see that, some of these are quite high. I'm personally from Breathitt County, Kentucky, and I see that, Kentucky's at 83%. And, as probably all of you are probably interested in your hometown communities, right? The states where you're from. So let's kind of do a little exploration into voter registration in my local community, in my local county. So change data. We'll just select our state here. Alrighty, and we can go on the county level. So once we click on the county level, you'll see that some of these youth civic engagement indicators, you're not able to select those. Those are very much on the state level, but you have access to many other conditions that shape engagement, right? So let's click on some indicators for youth voting and civic engagement. We can do up to 3 on each, right? So let's just look at some nonprofits per capita, rates of associations. That could be neat to kind of explore. And let's look at child poverty rate, right? Let's see data. So here on the county level, we get a very nice snapshot of some different measures here. So we see that voter turnout is very close to the national rate. We see that voter registration is actually 93.4%, which is substantially higher than the national rate of 61.5%. And the state rate overall is 83%. So that's quite high. And then votes cast is 523. So you can imagine this is a very small rural community, right? And you see some of the conditions that shape youth engagement. We have a very high child poverty rate. There's kind of low nonprofits per capita compared to the national and the state rate, as well as rate of association. So even though there are obviously some improvements here on some of these conditions, we still have high levels of voter registration, right? So let's explore that further because each community doesn't, exist in a silo, right? They exist within a massive ecosystem that includes factors on the congressional level, the state level, the federal level. So there's other things that we can kind of explore to investigate, voter registration, in this county and in this state. Here at the bottom, you'll also see that some related research. So this is also a great thing to kind of leverage as you're exploring the data visual in your own communities and communities of interest. You'll see that you have related research here, young people in civic deserts. This is very much based on locality and some of the indicators. We also see young people in political parties is here as well. So this is some things to look into. But now let's look on the kind of the state level, right? And kind of investigate this further in terms of what are some of the conditions that could be shaping voter registration in the state that's also impacting the county level. So now we'll just want to click back on select county so it gets back on the state level, right? And we'll unclick some of these different measures. But now, since we're looking at the state level, we have access to some of these other different conditions that shape youth engagement. We have the political landscape here. So, if we're investigating voter registration, right, we see that, there's a few things that could affect that, some facilitative election laws. So let's investigate that. There's also the info button that, explains a little bit more about that. So this is a 1 to 10 score that's used on the YESI, but it kind of goes into, does this state have facilitative, election laws like voter registration, pre-registration, automatic registration, and other things of that nature. If we wanted to learn more, we can click in there. And we have a whole page that kind of goes into this index, the different laws and things of that nature. Let's also look like statute on high school voter registration. That also could be impactful here. And again, leveraging the info button, we have embedded other things within the state that we can look into. And something else, so we have one more indicator we can choose from. Well, let's look at nonprofits serving young people. Let's look at the state level data. So on the state level, something that kind of points out is that, you know, we do have statutes on high school voter registration. So that's something that could be impacting, you know, the high levels of voter registration rate that we do have. So we click that info button, we can research that further. We also see that there are some facilitative election laws on the books in Kentucky, right? So if we wanted to research that further, we could do that most certainly right there. So those are a couple different things. And just to kind of also kind of point out here, we have a short summary here for each state. So we also see that Kentucky exceeds national averages in its rate of young people belonging to a group. That's definitely something that could be impacting, something that could be why we see higher levels of voter registration rates in Kentucky. So even within a short 5 minutes, we were able to kind of look at you know, a county level, a state level, and kind of get an idea of some of the different conditions that shape youth engagement. And we could definitely do a deeper dive, you know, if we had more time or if we wanted to. But even right now, we have some great opportunities to kind of leverage this data. So one way we could do that is we see download data right here. So we can download this data in a couple different formats. We could do a PDF. So downloading the PDF, we see that it's actually quite nice. This could be great worksheet or, you know, something to use in classrooms. This could be something to use, you know, maybe an issue briefing or something like that inside a little folder. I mean, it's just pretty nice to use. We also have the option of downloading the CSV file. CSV is just an Excel format. If you wanted to create your own graph in Excel, one of the things with this is that when you download your data, it's very much just the data that's included, you know, on that snapshot. But if you would like to investigate this further, if you would like to look at, say, the voter turnout, voter registration rates for all the different states, you know, we often are contacted by other groups, you know, seeking data, right? So we could definitely make that available. So go to our contact page, reach out to us. We're happy to make those larger data sets available for you. But probably my most favorite part, absolute favorite part about this data tool and really leveraging it is that you can download the JPEG, the image of this snapshot. And you'll see that it's quite nice of an image, but it's also almost a 1v1, right? This is, you know, something great that you can really leverage to promote the amazing success in your community, right? And you could definitely do this to open conversations on social media. For instance, if I wanted to, I've now downloaded this image, I could, you know, give a shout out to some of my election administrators in my local community of Breathitt County. I could do it for the state. I could appreciate the Secretary of State, you know, about, you know, the great work that is underway. So I think this is something that we can really leverage to kind of bridge and open these conversations. And it's also something that we can use to kind of leverage and build awareness about different issues and ways in which we can improve, right? We have these huge, amazing levels of voter registration rate. Voter turnout is just on the national average. You know, facilitative election laws, it looks like there's some more on the books we could have, right? And so we could really build awareness about, you know, some of the conditions that shape youth engagement, as well as youth voting and civic engagement. So that's one of the things that I really appreciate and like about this feature of the data tool. This is also a JPEG, so it's something very easy you could do. You could include in-person handouts if you wanted to design a one-pager using a number of different applications. You could definitely do that. And then we also have a share functionality. If you wanted to copy the link, send an email, something with Facebook, you have a nice preview screen. So there's my profile, and there's a preview screen of this data visual. One thing is though is using the share buttons from Twitter, you don't actually get a nice preview screen, but you can download an amazing JPEG that you can use to share out and build awareness and uplift the amazing work that is going on in your community or in your state. So that's one thing that I wanted to kind of highlight. But that's not all. We also have something else we could do. If you see here, we have a lovely take action button here. So if you click there, we are transported here, and then I'll pass this over to Sarah, who's going to talk a little bit more about how to take action with some of our research and data sets.
Great, thank you, Adam. So this link that Adam just clicked, which is accessible off of the side of the landing page in one of those blue block boxes, and then here, we've offered just a host of ways that teachers or those who work in the voting space, journalists, and really all of us can work to drive change on the metrics and conditions reviewed in the tool. So you might spend some time on your own reviewing the suggested next steps and then coming up with your own. We also want to highlight one particular resource. If you click into the K-12 civic education bucket, it's accessible here and off the tool's main landing page, where we've created a 4-page compendium of lesson ideas for teachers across disciplines. So something for social studies folks, art, journalism, math, ELA, just ideas to run with really for those who are interested in having their students engage directly with the tool themselves. So this is accessible in a couple spots. We'd also love to hear ideas for that teachers are coming up with themselves, I'm sure better than anything we can offer. And I should also say that we're interested in considering the prospect of hosting a webinar specifically for K-12 civic educators who want to learn more about the tool and hopefully to create space too for folks to bat ideas around together. If that's something that would be relevant for you or for your colleagues or friends in your network, definitely let us know and we'll make sure we'd love to engage in the thought process around that, or we'll make sure to highlight if and when that's happening in the weeks to come. That's basically the walkthrough and the highlights reel that we wanted to offer today. We do want to make sure that we have enough space here now to answer any questions that might have come up for y'all. We had this conversation yesterday and fielded a lot of questions around the YESI, but anything about the tool right now is fair game. And then we hope you stick around. We've got a few questions we'd love to ask of you too at the end. But first, feel free to take advantage of that chat. And thanks to those of you who have been in asking questions as we've gone throughout the conversation today. I'll offer folks a couple